Good evening, folks. This is Lord Kuma. This is my first official video that I'm making on here besides an introduction video. And one of the things I wanted to share with y'all is that um, this. This is a black leather-bound journal with some nice yellowish lined pages, blank pages that I bought many years ago to do sort of journal entries and writing a memoir kind of thing. And it didn't really work out. I made one or two entries in it, those entries happened to be in a very dark time of my life, where I was in a very bad place. But they are representing that time from very early on, before it got dark, while I was in that particular situation, and they kind of represent that time in a more positive light than they actually were. So, um, when I found this, I had forgotten that I had this. I didn't know what had happened to it. I found it on a bookshelf, buried underneath some other books, and I decided to amend the previous couple of entries, at least the one dealing with the situation I had found myself in at that time in my life. Um, and this being about 5 or 6 years later since those entries were made, maybe longer. um, excuse me, and I decided to amend those and kind of update the memoir as to where I'm at now in my life. And one of the things that I decided that I was going to do with this said journal was to use it to write down ideas and maybe some scripts, if you can call them that, of content that I'm going to put on this channel. Sort of a running log of what my videos might be about and how to organize them. I tend to have to write things down to organize them. I don't think there's any sin in that. Um, so the first video that I wanted to make, because it's kind of important to me, being a dungeon master, um, myself, a new-ish dungeon master, I wanted to write an open letter to Mathew Mercer. Now, for those who don't know who Mathew Mercer is, and anybody who plays D&D probably already does, but for those who don't, he is the dungeon master for a wildly successful, to understate the obvious, um, live streaming Twitch channel, Dungeons and Dragons show called Critical Role. And he built the world and writes the stories, and he has a bunch of voice actors who are incredible at playing his stories out to through I should say through their characters, that they are playing with, and he never expected it to get this big. I certainly understand why it got this big, but I wanted to, write an open letter to him and express the amount of inspiration that I drew from him and from the game that he runs and the people that play with him on that show. So I'm going to read to you a letter that I wrote. I literally wrote it down. I don't know if you can see that. I actually wrote it down, and no, that's not great handwriting, but at least I can mostly read it. Let me get some nectar of the gods, otherwise known as coffee. It'll be rare on this channel for me to not be drinking coffee, so just to forewarn you. So, without further ado, let me give you a open letter to Mathew Mercer. Dear Mathew, many folks call themselves dungeon masters. The resurgence of the game has been remarkable, bounding on miraculous. Yet there are some few who, upon mentioning the name, are transcendent of the title. You, Mathew Mercer, are one of those few. To be frank, before 2018 I had scarcely played Dungeons and Dragons. Save for a brief stint in a 4th edition game, in a third edition sliced out Pathfinder game for an even briefer period. My fiancee Desiree had been taking in and talking about a streaming broadcast called Critical Role on something called Twitch. Being 43 at the time, I had never heard of live streaming or this Twitch thing, nor had I heard of Critical Role. She told me a bit about it and showed me a few episodes of this group called Vox Machina. I took them in a passing way and didn't think much of it, although I was struck that the story and delivery of the game was quite good. But coming into the story partway in makes for difficult understanding. Fast forward about 6 months or so, and I happened to stumble upon Critical Role again. Having joined Twitch and a much more with it crowd, I was a little confused at first, again, coming into the story partway in, about 40 episodes or so. But I was somehow drawn to this story, to these characters. About 10 more episodes in, and I was hooked. And about a handful later, as my heart was ripped beating out of my chest at the death of Mollymock, Tea Leaf, I was a full-fledged critter. I had come in recent years into a circle of friends who were D&D players all, and it seemed altogether appropriate that I should expose myself to the game and the culture. Desiree had played frequently in her hometown, and I was eager for me to learn. I did so much more than that. From that time till now, I haven't missed an episode, and I even went back and watched all the episodes I had missed prior to finding it again. I then started to learn the game, its rules, its mechanics, and its lore. I was hooked. I listened to you, Mathew, spin tales, drop lore, and weave threads of plot through a world of your own making. I was, and still am, inspired. Through your work and your talent, I have gained some measure of confidence that, in fact, yeah, I can do that. Through the influence of yourself and others, and through the collective educational efforts of yourself and your like, I have done something a little rash. At the age of almost 45 years old, I have gone from not playing to running 2 campaigns, for my fiancée and our kids and one of our friends, and another for other friends of ours, including my daughter and, or should I say my fiancée and her daughter. And I'm having a blast. So thank you, Mathew Mercer. You are a legend and my mentor. My family and friends thank you also, for if not for you, they would have no game to get lost in. You are a legend, at least to me and my family. Humbly yours, Lord Kuma, a.k.a. Nick the Bear, a.k.a. Nick Mares. And that's my open letter to Mathew Mercer. I felt the need to write that because Critical Role has filled this void in my life every Thursday. We never miss an episode. If we do miss the beginning of an episode by a few minutes, we always go back later and watch it, the part we missed, just in case something happened. And that's the kind of effect that Mathew Mercer has on his game and on his players, is that you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss a thing, because you're going to miss something. And it's a fact. You're going to miss something. Something important, something that's going to come back later in the campaign to spring up out of nowhere. Sometimes well after the campaign, as in the the case of the wedding of uh, Vexalia and Percy from campaign one. No spoilers, but there were things that popped up that they had forgotten about, that were still lingering. So I think the real genius here is that he's able to weave these stories in a way that just grabs a hold of you and makes you give a crap about these fictional characters that are being played out by very talented folks. Make no mistake about it. The voice actors who are on there, Travis Willingham and Marisha Ray and Taliesin Jaffe and Liam O'Brien and Sam Riegel and Laura Bailey, along with all the other guests that they have come out on that show. I mean, Christ, Liam O'Brien was World was that iconic World of Warcraft voice for Illidan Stormrage, and I didn't even know that was him until I started watching this show. Um, and they care so much about what they're doing. It makes it really special. It really comes across. It's really heartfelt, and you can tell that they're really coming from a place of deep caring, not only for the story but for the characters and for the audience that's watching. They want to put on a good show, and it shows. Not that other channels and shows don't. I'm not saying anything like that, but Critical Role kind of really it set the bar pretty damn high. At least in my book. There have been some shows that I have really enjoyed. Matthew Colville's Chain series has been wonderful. I enjoy the hell out of that. But Critical Role's where it started with me. They inspired me to pick up a Dungeon Master's Guide and say, hey, what's this whole Dungeon Master thing about anyway? I've played in a couple of campaigns briefly. What's that all about? What does it take to run one of these things? He makes it look so easy. Can I really do that? And once I got into the meat of what actually goes into running a campaign and running an encounter and running combat and putting a world together, or at least expanding on a world that exists already, like if you're using a module or something, I realized that there was a lot of open-endedness to the process, and I relished in that for some reason. It spoke to me. I remember from the first campaign they had Joe Manganiello on there, who's from my hometown of Pittsburgh. Uh, you know, to be able to add that kind of sauce, as it were, to the story that he's telling and be able to do the voices and the sound effects and stuff like that. That's a special, special talent. There's not a lot of people in the world that can do it the way he does it. And that's a note to any other DMs that might be watching this. Don't put yourself up to that. Don't even hold yourself up to that. I'm an idiot and I'm trying. But I figure it this way. I can try to reach for Matt's level, which is like way up here. And if I come this close, or that close, or that close to what's up here, I'm still running a pretty damn good game, and I'm going to be considered a pretty damn good GM. And I'm so new into this that I'm learning. I'm learning as I go. But I wouldn't be doing it at all if it wasn't for Matt Mercer. He really put that seed in my mind that, gee, this isn't just a game of kill everything in sight and gather all the loot. This is it can be more than that. It can be storytelling. It can be role playing. It can be mysteries and adventures and all these interconnected pieces that, if woven together correctly, can be very entertaining and very addictive, is the best word I can use on it. You get hooked on it. You get hooked on where's the story going next? You know, as a kid, I loved the old. This is probably going to belie my age a little bit, but I loved the choose your own destiny books. I used to read the hell out of those things when I was a kid. I think I read every one in the elementary school library 3 times at least. They only had a handful of them. And I discovered that some choices were bad, some choices were good, but you never know until you made the choice. And that really has carried me into running Dungeons and Dragons and playing Dungeons and Dragons. You don't know where it's going to go until you make that choice, make the commitment, and go for it. Um, and it's very metaphorical to life in general. Out here in the real world, it's you don't know until you try, and you know that old saying: if you are going to fail, at least fail daring greatly. It's better to dare greatly and fail than never to try. Is I'm paraphrasing badly, but that's the gist. So, anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. I wanted to say a very heartfelt thank you, Matt Mercer, from the bottom of my heart, and my family and friends. Thank you for not only a wonderful show, but a wonderful campaign setting, a wonderful addition to the culture and the community of Dungeons and Dragons that um, it has enjoyed such a huge resurgence of late, of the last several years. And, I wish all of you at the show nothing but the greatest success, the greatest achievement, and the most fun that you could possibly have. And I know that's why you all do it, because that's why anybody does it. If you're not having fun, you shouldn't be doing it. So I just wanted to pass that along. Hopefully, somehow, some way, you'll see this, and hopefully, it's it continues to be the joy of your life. Um, don't ever let it become the bane of your existence. Um, Never let your work that you love become the work that you hate. Um, if it starts to become too much, by all means, brother, step away. I've had to do that several times in my life with different things that had just become too much, and I just had to step away for a while. And you come back to it, you get refreshed, you change it up, and then you continue on and you have fun again. Um, but from what I've seen, at least in campaign 2, you're nowhere close to losing your joy anyway. You might be close to pulling your hair out at times, but you're not losing your joy, and I that does my heart well. Um, so again, congratulations, all the best. I love you. We love you. Um, and no, it isn't Thursday yet, but I wish it was. Um, and for the rest of you out there in internet land that have lasted this long with me and my ramblings, I heartfelt thank you to you, and hopefully this will be one of many more to come back and uh, uh, discuss things and react to things. So to the rest of you out there, I will say thank you for coming and watching, and stay cool.